Minority groups is such a broad term, um, and just because someone is of color or someone has as their first language, let's say Spanish, doesn't necessarily mean that they're disadvantaged. Sometimes we mistake those two terms, and that someone may be an African American, they may be black, and they may be the president of the United States. There are others who unfortunately are sleeping on cardboard on the streets of New York and San Francisco. So, the view that I have is you have to be very careful about identifying what you really mean by a minority, and typically that word has been virtually synonymous with economically marginalized, socially, economically marginalized. I think what's cool about mobile and with regard to the entire population, and perhaps more specifically, let's say the population of color, or the population that we tend to identify particularly in Texas as Latinos, is that the combination of geolocation and interesting time of day lets us deliver messages, for example, to people who enjoy spending their money for groceries, for restaurants, coffee shops within their local community. And the geolocation possibilities we now have in targeting the delivery of our messages is tremendously enhanced. The other issue is that we always have the phone with us. Even those people who have a laptop or who have a desktop, they're out on the street, they're engaged, and as we've all seen, and sometimes it's rather annoying, as soon as that phone rings or buzzes, we look at it. We stop what we're doing. The effectiveness of mobile depends a lot, not so much on the message, although the message is important, and I'll comment on that in a moment, but on the context. And the context is the situation in which you find yourself. The context can be the time of day in which the message is received. The context can be whether you're happy or sad. You just had an automobile accident and it was a fender bender, and now you get a message, and quite frankly, you're not particularly interested in it. And so the context, the best metaphor I can give you for that is when direct marketing took hold of your telephone and it rang during dinner and someone was trying to sell you a magazine, you were very annoyed, and with a short period of time the government had processes whereby you could list your phone so that direct marketers couldn't call it. There's an interesting relationship in terms of the frequency with which we receive messages or see ads. And after a point you get to this wear out where it becomes an inverted U curve. We increase our interest in the product or brand or service, and then it just gets to be too much, and suddenly our interest takes a dive, and that's called the inverted U, or the wear out, by people who plan media. I think there's sometimes more tolerance for that phenomenon within marginalized communities because they haven't been contacted that much, but they'll become more and more sophisticated. Some of us, and it gets to be an age-sensitive issue, grew up in a world of broadcast. And over the past decade in particular, the terms of effectiveness for those of us who were involved in advertising became narrowcasting. What becomes important here is what's personally relevant to you, just as it is when you're watching the large screen, as opposed to something that appears on what some people call the third screen. If you see a car ad and you're in the market for buying a car, you tend to pay more attention to it. Sometimes, by the way, you can see some ads that are of no interest to you, and when that happens, rest assured you're watching the wrong program, because the programs, the commercial spots that have been purchased on that program have been purchased to suit the audience that's supposed to watch that program. So, personal relevance rules, and we know more and more what you're going to appreciate that you're receiving. I think the essential elements of an effective campaign delivered mobily or delivered to any of the mediums really depends upon the relevance and the content of the message and the context in which it's delivered. We know there are some people that receive messages when they're sitting alone in their office or they're waiting for the airplane. There are others who are in a much broader social context. They're with their family or they're with friends. There's something advantageous about getting that message, in that if you're out in a bar having a drink with a couple of your buddies, and you get an interesting message that says, hey, if you respond right now, you can get two 2 movie tickets for the price of 1. And you tell the guys, hey, we wanted to go see this film anyhow, and, you know, and so the thing becomes viral, and the virality within a minority community is as important as it is within a broad student body. There's another interesting issue that's always difficult to comment on when you talk about minorities and advertising. And advertising and morality, advertising and ethics are juxtaposed. If you're selling liquor into an African American community and you're sensitive to the health issues and the level of alcoholism that exists, the issue is how many and what's the frequency of those ads that you're going to deliver and place within that locality and to target that particular community. In general, whether you look at that issue or others, advertising and ethics are just intimately related, and it's going to be something that takes place with the advantages we now have with mobile delivery. I think Nike has always been sensational, and what I really like about Nike now is how they're using digital, how they're using mobile, and it isn't a question anymore of, you know, showing Michael with his hands almost 1.5 feet above the rim. Okay, what they've done now is they've made an athletic shoe for people who run, and it's got a little chip in it, and it tells you how many miles you've run or how fast you've run them, and that goes into a competitive, almost game-like network. And they understand your privacy, they understand your interest in running on a regular basis, your interest in your own personal health. And they also understand the privacy issues and the intimacy of being able to deliver in a narrow casting fashion a particular message to people who are runners who are wearing Nike.